Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Egypt and the Red Cross joined the search for bodies of Israeli hostages in Gaza. The UK signs a $10.5 billion Typhoon fighter jet deal with Turkey. Jamaica braces itself for the arrival of a Category 5 strength hurricane. Thank you for tuning in. We begin in the Middle East, where Egypt and the Red Cross have officially joined the search for the bodies of deceased hostages in Gaza. This follows the recent Israeli green light for both teams to operate beyond the so-called Yellow Line, marking Israeli military control in the Gaza Strip.
Israel has allowed Egypt and Red Cross teams into Gaza as search for hostage bodies widens on Sunday. The teams were permitted to move beyond the so-called Yellow Line. That line marks the Israeli military's pullback zone in the Gaza Strip.
In full cooperation with Israel, the Prime Minister approved the entry of an Egyptian team into the Gaza Strip to assist in searching for our remains of our deceased hostages. Now, this is a technical team only, and none of these personnel are in the military. Now, the Red Cross and the Egyptian team are allowed entry beyond the IDF's Yellow Line position into Gaza territory to conduct the search for our hostages.
In the shades of Israel's decision, Red Cross and Hamas meet in attempt to locate bodies of deceased hostages in Gaza. They reportedly met members of Hamas's shadow unit in Rafah, who escorted them to sites believed to contain Israeli remains, according to Hamas-linked media. The latest development comes amid ongoing efforts to implement elements of a fragile agreement concerning hostages and post-war arrangements in the Gaza Strip. Up until now, Israel had not permitted the entry of such teams into Gaza. So far, Israel has repatriated the remains of 195 Palestinians, while Hamas has returned 15 bodies of Israeli hostages.
In the meantime, Hamas has said it will hand over another body of a deceased hostage, which would bring the total of hostages remaining in Gaza down to 12. Now, over in Ankara, Turkey and the United Kingdom have signed a major defense agreement on Eurofighter Typhoon jets that the two sides say will boost NATO security. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the agreement for 20 new aircraft will boost defense ties and support jobs in the British aerospace industry. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called the deal a new symbol of a strategic partnership and said it would open the doors to further joint projects. Both leaders reaffirmed plans to expand trade.
This will bolster security across NATO, deepen our bilateral defence cooperation, and boost economic growth here and in the United Kingdom, securing 20,000 British jobs, building these state-of-the-art fighter jets. That is something to celebrate. I'm proud that British Typhoons will form a vital part of the Turkish Air Force for many years to come, as you defend NATO's southeastern flank for the good of all of us.
Bugünkü görüşmelerimizin odağını ticaret ve
I regard this agreement as a new symbol of the strategic relationship between two close allies. We are determined to increase our trade volume to $30 billion in the first stage, and then to $40 billion. We remain committed to further strengthening our economic relations. Our relevant institutions are taking a number of steps, including updating our free trade agreement. We are also exploring opportunities for joint investments in third countries. Our goal is to establish new partnerships in the fields of energy and defense industries.
In other news, China has offered humanitarian assistance to the United States after two U.S. Navy aircraft crashed into the South China Sea during military exercises. Beijing said the accidents stem from frequent U.S. military deployments in the region, which it claims undermine maritime security and regional stability. The crashes, involving a Navy helicopter and a fighter jet, happened within half an hour during routine operations, according to the Navy's Pacific Fleet. All crew members were rescued and investigations into the causes of the crashes are underway. Over in Europe, Lithuania has announced plans to close its border with Belarus indefinitely after a series of airspace violations involving smuggler balloons. Prime Minister Inga Ruginiene said the incidents, which forced several airport closures last week, amount to hybrid attacks from across the border. Officials also warned Lithuania may seek NATO consultations if provocations continue.
So we are now ready for a decision to close the border with Belarus indefinitely, but only with certain exceptions. This means that diplomats and diplomatic mail will be able to move, and ours and EU citizens will be able to enter our country from Belarus, but all other movement will be closed. In this way, we are sending a signal to Belarus and saying that no hybrid attack will be tolerated here, and we will take all the strictest measures to stop such attacks. At the same time, the Ministry of Defense will take action, and as of today, the army will take all necessary measures, including kinetic ones, to shoot down balloons. We are ready to take even the most severe actions when our airspace is violated. We are also coordinating with our neighbours and may discuss activation of Article 4 of NATO.
Moving on to trade, China and the U.S. have reached a preliminary agreement on key issues, including extending their trade truce, fentanyl control, and export regulations. The announcement came after 2 days of talks of trade delegations in Kuala Lumpur. China did not provide further details on the agreed terms, but U.S. President Donald Trump said he's confident of reaching a deal with China's Xi Jinping, who he's expected to meet in South Korea this week. U.S. President Donald Trump received a royal welcome from Emperor Naruhito at Tokyo's Imperial Palace. He became the first foreign leader to meet Naruhito since his ascension in 2019, describing the emperor as a great man. Trump is also set to meet Japan's first female prime minister, Sanae Takaichi, on Tuesday. Their talks are expected to focus on Japan's planned $550 billion investment in the United States. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has invited the leaders of Central Asian countries for a summit in the White House next month. The gathering is scheduled for November 6th. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev sent a letter to Trump thanking him for the invitation. He noted that he shares the main goals of Donald Trump's domestic and foreign policies, in particular supporting traditional values based on common sense principles, as well as the American president's desire to maintain peace and security. Turning to Africa, the UN has called for a safe passage for trapped and terrified civilians in Sudan's El Fasher, after fighters from the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces claimed to have seized control of the besieged city. UN humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher expressed deep alarm over reports of civilian casualties and mass displacement amid fierce fighting in the city. He stressed that civilians must be granted access to humanitarian aid. According to the UN, some 260,000 civilians, half of them children, remain stranded in El Fasher without food or humanitarian assistance. Jamaicans are bracing for the arrival of Category 5 strength Hurricane Melissa, expected to make landfall early Tuesday. Residents in coastal areas spent Monday reinforcing homes and filling sandbags as the storm gained strength south of Cuba, bringing strong winds and heavy rain to Jamaica's south coast. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has warned that the hurricane could cause catastrophic flooding and rainfall surpassing that of Hurricane Hugo in 1989. Mandatory evacuation orders have been issued for several communities, with the U.S. National Hurricane Center forecasting destructive winds of up to 260 kilometers per hour. Now, global warming is triggering irreversible changes in nature. That's according to more than 150 scientists in a newly published Global Tipping Points report. They say coral reefs are already undergoing irreversible collapse, with other ecosystems at risk, ahead of next month's COP30 summit in Brazil.
A new study warns the planet is crossing dangerous climate thresholds faster than expected. The Global Tipping Points report, compiled by 160 scientists worldwide, says the world's coral reefs are in near total collapse, marking the first irreversible tipping point in nature. Researchers link this to record marine heat waves that bleached more than 80% of reefs, threatening the quarter of all marine life that depends on them. The report comes just weeks before the COP30 climate summit in Brazil, where nations will face pressure to accelerate emission cuts. Researchers say the Amazon rainforest could be the next major system to fail if temperatures rise above 1.5 degrees Celsius. They also warn that disruption to a key ocean current, known as the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, could alter weather patterns across Europe. Lead author of the Global Tipping Points report, Tim Lenton, said change is happening fast and tragically, but noted signs of progress as renewables outpaced coal for the first time this year, according to the think tank Ember. Global temperatures have already risen about 1.4 degrees since pre-industrial times, according to UN and EU data. With current policies, the world is still heading toward 3 degrees of warming, far beyond safe limits.
Now back to one of our main stories and Keir Starmer's Ankara visit to talk on the agreements reached, as well as recent Turkish diplomatic engagements. We're joined by Mehmet Ogucu, former diplomat and chairman of the London Energy Club, coming to us from Izmir. Welcome, thank you so much for being with us. Now let's start with the visit itself. $10.7 billion fighter jet deal was signed for 20 Eurofighter Typhoon jets. What are your thoughts on the deal, the areas in which the two NATO allies can further expand their cooperation, as well as Ankara's broader push for procurement of fighter jets?
Well, Eurofighter deal is just one of the items that Starmer and Turkish leadership discussed. But let me also remind you that this deal is not only between Turkey and the United Kingdom. In Eurofighter consortium, you also have Germany, France, and Italy alongside United Kingdom. Therefore, it's not a done deal. We know that there are some reservations expressed by the German side. So if the four parties come together and fully agree and align their position, then deal will go through. So it's more than 8 billion pounds actually the value. And it is going to be a part of the Turkish effort to enhance its air defense and air weapons system, including F-35, from which Turkey is excluded, F-16 modernization and new kits to be bought from United States, General Dynamics. Then Turkey also has its own Khan fighter, which will become operational in less than 10 years. So Eurofighter will be in between if it works. So still, this is not a done deal, as I say. But Starmer's visit is symbolic and strategic in many ways. This is one of his first visits overseas as UK Prime Minister, and it shows the value and significance attached to UK relationship with Turkey. UK being on the western side of Europe, Turkey on the eastern flank of Europe, and both nations, UK being exited from European Union, are trying to find some strategic partnership opportunities. And one of them is in the defense area, is as you mentioned. And the other one is more on the energy sector, which Starmer also referred to during his press meeting today. SMRs, Turkey signed a deal with the United States during Erdogan's visit to White House with Trump, but also Starmer would like to get some British companies to work with Turkey on SMRs. And this is small modular reactors. Then also, digitalization, green energy technologies, protecting energy corridors, where BP is involved, a major British company in Azerbaijan, as you know, and also containing the risks and threats posed by Russia. That's one of the common objectives, I think, because both Turkey and the United Kingdom have interest in stabilizing the Black Sea. Then Syrian dossier was there because United Kingdom played an equally important role in making sure that al-Shara march all the way through Damascus and through some US, UK, and Turkey efforts, joint efforts. So whatever happens and unfolds in Syria, UK has significant interest there. Then both nations also would like to upgrade the existing trade relationship, because Turkey and the United Kingdom has a free trade agreement, but which is just a rollover from the customs union, which is not sufficient. So both nations would like to upgrade this in order to increase trade volume further to 40 billion pounds, as Starmer put it. Right now, I think it's around 28 billion, and in favor of Turkey in many ways. So there are many areas for two strategic allies to work together.
You've touched upon Erdogan's visit to the U.S. and his meeting with Trump, as well as Turkey's influence in the Middle East. The Turkish president has recently been on a Gulf tour, signing various agreements and to hold talks on acquiring used Eurofighter jets. Now, that tour, of course, came after the signing of the Gaza ceasefire agreement in Egypt. Now, as things stand, how do you see Ankara's position in the graph of all the major players exerting influence in the Middle East?
Well, after Israeli policy to get rid of the Iran and Iranian proxies in the Middle East, including those in Gaza, Hamas, and also Hezbollah in Lebanon, then direct attack on Iran against its nuclear facilities together with the United States, and also stabilizing relations somehow with Iraq, already Egypt and Jordan, and Abraham Accords with the Gulf nations. Israel has emerged as one of the most powerful nations in the Middle East, and Turkey being the other one. By any comparison, Turkey, of course, is the greatest power to reckon with, militarily, economically, population-wise, as well as the hinterland in the Middle East and the Gulf. Therefore, it seems to me that both Israel and Turkey right now at loggerheads. They dislike each other. However, I think in the medium to long term, there is going to be some sort of a system and order in the Middle East where Turkey and Israel, two most powerful nations in the region, will have to work together. And Erdogan has followed this up, of course, in the Gulf nations. He toured them, and economic relations, defense ties, and energy matters have been discussed heatedly. But let's not jump into easy conclusion that the ceasefire signed in Sharm el-Sheikh with the leadership of Trump and several countries in the Middle East, including also Pakistan, it doesn't mean that peace will come quickly. It's going to take more and more time. And Israel might spoil the game anytime. We have seen incidents of that. The Knesset endorsed a bill to annex the West Bank, which nobody, including US, would accept that right now. But it shows the fragility of peace in the region. I think Turkey, together with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, will be playing a critical role in stabilizing the region and helping also reconstruction in Gaza as well as in Syria. This requires hundreds of billions of dollars. And Azerbaijan has also played a key role, both in stabilizing Syria, providing natural gas through Turkey, and also helping the ceasefire deal in Gaza in many ways. It has excellent relations with Israel, so it's using its influence in that regard. Therefore, I think what we are seeing right now, Trump-Erdogan meeting in White House, which is significant progress in relations. And now Stormer, also a close ally of the Washington as well as Ankara, is having talks. It's not only about energy, defense, trade, but I'm sure they are going beyond that to discuss what kind of arrangement could be in place in the new world order. What will be the role of Iran, Syria, Russia, and whether there's going to be a European defense mechanism, which will not replace NATO, but if there's going to be a weakened commitment coming from the United States, what Europe can do together. So it's
Indeed.
not only
And we will
Germany,
be
France,
following
and
it
UK,
closely.
Turkey
Mehmet,
will be a key part of it.
thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insights.
With pleasure.
As we've said earlier during the program, US President Donald Trump has invited the leaders of Central Asian countries for a summit in the White House. On the upcoming gathering in Washington, we're talking with Richard Spooner of the Caspian Policy Center, coming to us from Tashkent. Welcome, Richard. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this is the first summit of the C5+1 format at the highest level in the White House, and it's set to follow a tightly packed Asia tour of the US president. What would you expect from this gathering, and what interests does Washington have in Central Asia?
I think it's clear that Washington is interested in the critical raw materials that are in Central Asia. And so I'm sure that's going to be a subject of discussion. Washington, of course, is interested in issues of security and anti-terrorism in the region. I have read that Washington might be interested in trying to reacquire, if you will, the Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. I'm not sure exactly how that would all work out, but that's something I've read has been mentioned in Washington as something that they would like to do to regain that strategic foothold in the region.
Well, as you've just now mentioned that strategic foothold, do you believe that Washington has been monitoring all the developments with Russia's influence waning in the region because of its invasion of Ukraine? China has been gaining ground with loans and infrastructure investments in Central Asia. The EU has also recently upped its engagement with Central Asia as well. Would you say that all of these developments might have pushed Washington to get back into the game?
That's possible. I think there are people in Washington, in the Congress in particular, who convinced the administration that it was important to show support for the C5+ format. It is the 10th anniversary, and this will bring together the heads of state, as you mentioned. I think, though, that really Washington is looking at this in terms of an opportunity to perhaps make a statement vis-a-vis China. Of course, is going to take China's place, the main economic player in Central Asia. And I do not think that this is some sort of strategic move by Washington. But critical minerals are very important. Central Asia has critical minerals. The United States, of course, just recently reached an agreement with Australia about very comprehensive cooperation on critical minerals. And Australia's sector is further along than the sector is in Malaysia. So I think we will see, business-wise, we will see more focus on developing projects between the United States and Australia. But developing a supply chain is particular one that's not just about mining, but that's also about processing and refining finished products is important. In Central Asia, the two main players, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, have made it clear that they are willing to create incentives for investors who will participate in the processing and refining part beyond just mining. Because, it's in the processing and refining where China enjoys what's really almost a global monopoly. And that technology to make the finished products out of critical minerals, that's what's key forward, so that the United States doesn't depend so much on China. Just recently, China announced that it would require a rather potentially complicated approval process for any exports to the United States of materials that have even a small percentage of material that originated in China. That, of course, potentially could be a very big headache for the United States. Things like the defense industry, for instance. And while I think at this summit we may hear President Trump make some statements about the issues that he's encountering on trade with China, certainly we shouldn't expect the heads of state from Central Asia to engage in any anti-Chinese rhetoric, because China's too important to the 5 countries of Central Asia economically. But diversifying investment, doing business, the multi-vector diplomacy, multi-vector business is also important to the Central countries. So of course, interested in developing business as much as they can with the United States.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us and offering up your thoughts and insights.
My pleasure. Thank you.
In other news, there are strong signs of progress in the latest round of talks between Afghanistan and Pakistan. The 3-day negotiations in Istanbul are expected to conclude later tonight, with both sides working to resolve their outstanding issues. Our Tamim Bahis has more in Kabul.
The negotiations were convened after weeks of mounting friction along the shared border, including closures of key crossings and escalating security incidents that affected both civilians and commercial transport. Officials from both countries say they are under increasing pressure to restore stability and economic movement. Foreign Ministry sources have told A News that both delegations have reached agreement on most key issues during negotiations in Istanbul. Only a few points remain unresolved, and officials expect those to be finalized before the end of today. The discussions may continue late into the night. A joint statement is anticipated once the talks conclude. It is expected to include the extension of the current ceasefire, the reopening of routes, and confirmation of the next meeting's location and date. During a separate diplomatic event in Malaysia, where Thailand and Cambodia signed a ceasefire agreement, United States President Donald Trump again asserted that resolving the dispute between Afghanistan and Pakistan would be straightforward for him. This marks the 3rd time he has made that claim. Regional observers remain cautious, although they acknowledge that the progress reported tonight could mark a meaningful step toward reducing long-standing tension between the neighbors. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Uzbekistan and the European Union have reaffirmed their partnership during meetings in Brussels. The talks focused on expanding cooperation across trade, energy, and digital innovation, as well as Uzbekistan's progress toward joining the World Trade Organization. Our Sevilla Rajapova has the details.
During high-level talks in Brussels between President Shavkat Mirziyoyev and European Union leaders Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa, Uzbekistan and the European Union agreed to new project commitments worth more than $11 billion in sectors including green energy, transport, pharmaceuticals and digital technology, bringing total European investment commitments in Uzbekistan to nearly $44 billion. President Mirziyoyev outlined 4 priority directions for the next phase of cooperation: expanding local processing of strategic raw materials, promoting renewable energy and chemical industry projects, developing logistics corridors linking Europe and Asia, and accelerating digital transformation through IT parks and innovation hubs. The discussions also underline Uzbekistan's progress in its accession to the World Trade Organization. Uzbekistan first applied for the WTO membership in 1994, paused the process in 2005 and renewed it in 2018 as part of major economic reforms. Since 2020, 4 rounds of multilateral negotiations have been held, and bilateral trade talks with 9 WTO members have been completed, with European Union technical support. These outcomes reflect a growing partnership between Uzbekistan and the European Union, one aimed at strengthening economic resilience, expanding trade opportunities, and ensuring sustainable long-term development. It is Sivir Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
The mayor of Armenia's Gyumri, Vardan Gukasyan, faces new charges over statements aimed at renouncing or restricting the country's sovereignty by using or threatening with violence. The remarks made at the anti-corruption court in September referenced forming alliances with other countries. His lawyers say the charges are politically motivated. Earlier this month, Gukasyan and several others were detained in a bribery case. Iran's transport ministry has said Russia will provide $1.6 billion to complete the Rasht-Astara railway. The project is meant to connect Iran, Azerbaijan, and Russia. Our Turash Ralilu has more on that in Tehran.
Iran's Minister of Road and Urban Development, Farzaneh Sadegh, said the contract on construction of the Rasht-Astara railway in the Iranian province of Gilan will be concluded next month in Russia. Also, her deputy, Hushang Bazvand, announced Russia's agreement to finance the railway project worth $1.6 billion. Speaking to reporters on the sidelines of launching a road development project in central Iran, the minister said final agreement on signing the Rasht-Astara railway project was reached earlier this month during her visit to Azerbaijan. She said that the trilateral meeting on transport and cargo transit cooperation between Iran, Azerbaijan, and Russia in Baku was an important event that focused on completion of the international north-south transport corridor. The Astara-Rasht railway is the missing link of the 7,200-kilometer-long north-south corridor that will integrate railways of Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, and India. The project is 162 kilometers long, consisting of 8 stations, 56 bridges, and 35 overpasses. According to the minister's deputy, Bazvand, Russia has agreed to provide Iran with $1.6 billion in low-cost facilities at a 3% interest rate for the construction of the Rasht-Astara railway. Following the Iranian minister's visit to Baku, Sadegh said that in a meeting with Azerbaijani officials, both sides reviewed the progress of joint transport and transit projects and agreed on organizing transit of goods at the border. Sadegh, who is also the co-chairperson of Azerbaijan-Iran Joint Economic Cooperation Commission, added that progress of joint infrastructure projects demonstrates Baku and Tehran's firm determination to advance their shared development objectives. Turash Ralilu, Tehran, A News.
Georgia and Azerbaijan are reinforcing their security partnership, focusing on joint counter-terrorism efforts and regional cooperation. For more on that, we go to Tbilisi and our Nini Nikolaishvili.
The head of Georgia State Security Service, Mamuk Abdinardze, welcomed his Azerbaijani counterpart Ali Nagiev for an official visit focused on deepening intelligence and counterterrorism cooperation. Behind the formalities, the message was clear. Both countries see their partnership as vital to safeguarding the region from emerging threats and external pressures. According to the State Security Service, discussions centered on real-time information sharing, coordinated responses to hybrid threats, and closer collaboration against transnational crime. The officials underlined that cooperation between Tbilisi and Baku is not only about security, it's about reinforcing trust between two neighbors whose stability underpins the entire South Caucasus. Following the talks, Abdinardze and Nagiev paid tribute to fallen heroes in Tbilisi, laying wreaths at national memorials, a symbolic act underscoring shared values of sovereignty and peace. This meeting sends a clear signal. Amid regional uncertainty, Georgia and Azerbaijan are choosing partnership, pragmatism, and peace as the anchors of their security future. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to A News.